Check, check. Now can people hear me? Hello? Check. Oh boy. This is fun. Okay, so I got something going on with I'm on my MacBook microphone here because the Rodecaster just decided to lock up twice, which is always a good time. I really like it when my electronics just go into open rebellion. I'm having something weird is going on here with the tech. I made some changes around, and now everything is like just actively being strange. I don't know if anybody was here on Thursday last week, but we had like all sorts of little audio blips in the recording. And those were local, which like I would have attributed that to network problems or something, but we got the local recordings and it's coming out of the microphone, which now has me worried that the Rodecaster is doing something silly. Now, I wonder when the last time I updated this thing was. The fun thing about gear is that it's the gift that keeps on giving, where you get yourself, the simple thing is the whatever your MacBook microphone or your MacBook camera, and you have to assume that those are just going to function, right? Like that's sort of the game, is that you trust that when they make stuff like that it's going to work. And so then you say, oh, I'm going to make this better. I'm going to upgrade. And so you get a nicer microphone or a peripheral, or in this case, a Rodecaster Pro 2, which is like a preamp and mixer and mic, like XLR input all in one. And like, that's fun. I like having peripherals, but then the challenge with peripherals is that they continually need to be fiddled with because nobody will stop just building stuff, right? So you just end up with this sort of ongoing problem where a cool thing happened, and now that you've got your cool thing, they built some new feature, but the other device didn't build that feature yet, or built it a different way, or whatever. And so now all your shit's broken. And we get to figure out, like, does that mean that my Rodecaster is toast, or does that mean something else? Who knows? The joy of peripherals. So I'm now installing Rode's third-party app to see if there's a firmware update, because that would solve me a lot of pain. Because maybe that's the problem, right? Is that it just needs to be updated somehow. You don't seem dead. Connection troubleshooting. Connected to your computer, phone, or yeah, it's all connected. Well, I guess this is going to be a problem for another day because I'm not going to deal with it right now. Anyways, what's up, y'all? How you doing? I am mostly good. Not super thrilled about my electronics giving out on me, but which LUT I have loaded today. We're still using the Rec 709 straight out of the camera because I didn't feel like getting more monitors into the chain. Is the short answer there. But what's up, y'all? How's everybody doing? How's your Tuesday looking? It's Tuesday again. I really want this to show up. Like, I really want to fix this. And I want to understand why it's not showing up. Is it like so out of date that it can't even connect anymore? Because that would be cool. I also wonder if it's one of those things where, let's see, you're going back here. You know what? I gotta stop. I'll fix it later. Cool. So anyways, let's talk about what can I talk about? I've got a lot of projects going on. Some of them aren't quite ready for prime time yet, so I can't share any details. Today, I could go a couple ways. One of the things I was thinking about doing is potentially doing a build of get some of this shit out of here. Potentially doing a build of a feature that I've been working on for the Code TV site, which is updated profile pages, because we just released the second episode of season 3 of Web Dev Challenge. It's a great episode. If you haven't seen it yet, I hope you will take some time to go and watch it. But that is being accompanied by our brand new hackathon experience. And the hackathon experience is set up to make it so that you, as the viewer, as the community member, as a developer who wasn't on the show, are able to do the same challenge. Like, we want you to be able to do the same web dev challenge that anybody else can do. And the way that works is we put the rules of the challenge up. You're able to see the rules. You build your app, submit your app, and we want to, we're going to connect those to the hackathon pages themselves. We want to connect them to the like your profile on Code TV. And I also want to set them up as extras on the episodes, where the episodes are able to show like additional content, so that it's possible to like have, because we do clips and stuff, and I've wanted to show the clips for a long time. So all of that is just sort of me trying to think through how do we make this a little more immersive. And one of the things I want to do is like a badge system. So every hackathon will have a badge attached to it. If we'll have milestone badges for supporters. We'll have alumni badges for if you've participated on a show. We'll have, I don't know, maybe we'll have some other ones, like as we do different events and things, we'll come up with fun ways to do badges for those, all in the service of eventually trying to make this stuff more fun. Man, I wish I could get this thing to go to USB mode. Would be so nice. Connection failed. Click to retry. Oh, interesting. I wonder if it's like, oh my God. I think it's been off network. That would explain so much. That's really frustrating. Am I being just like the least interesting person in the world? Chat is dead silent today. Oh man, I don't remember the Wi-Fi password. Boy, this is a mess. So what's everybody doing? Are you're not paying attention to me? You're working and I'm just background noise. That's okay. I'm very happy to be background noise. There's my network. Jesus. There we go. I'm fishing for compliments and it's paying off. Let me get go in here. I'm putting the real password into this thing so that we can get hooked up and hopefully figure out what's going on with the connection here, because that would be so helpful. because I really I just want this dang thing to work. That's really all I'm after. Because I got all these things, all this gear, and I just want it to function. It's really where it's at. Gonna have time to make your morning coffee before. Yeah, I get that. I get that feeling. Working on building while watching the stream. Had your AI agent use GitHub to do a merge and just overwrite your entire code due to a bad merge. Ouch. Oof. That's rough. Could have pushed the code manually, but wanted to be lazy, and now you're feeling the pain. I get it. I've been struggling with this a little bit. I was subtweeting a bit yesterday because I saw, and I don't want to name names because I think everybody's coping with this in whatever way they want to cope with it. So my issue isn't with the person, it's with the system. But there was a post that went around yesterday, and at one point, an argument that was made in the post was like, hey, we used to be craftspeople and this used to be art, and now because we're going so fast, we have to be able to accept that it's not always going to be good, was sort of the like general thrust of the argument. And it was like it was weird to me to see that take, because it feels to me like it sort of surrenders a whole lot of ground to make that argument reasonable, because it's sort of saying like, well, the only reason we write code is to be as productive, where productive is a measure of how many units of code you produce as possible. And if you accept that premise, then the ability to produce very many tokens at a very fast pace, where in this case tokens is a unit of code, a line of code, a character on the screen, whatever it is, we can produce a whole lot of those very fast. And in order to do that without getting drowned in code review, you have to accept that it will sometimes be bad, and just know that you'll make mistakes and things will ship poorly, and that's okay, because you'll just make more tokens and those will eventually fix it, I guess. But it was interesting, because I feel I've been realizing that like something that rankles at me is a lot of the same people that I saw writing all these blog posts about the importance of craft, or the importance of, like they get on they talk about craftsmanship, right? And use that as a way to say that, well, you're not a real programmer because you don't get the craft. You're just a coder. You're just a pixel pusher, whatever, because you don't care about the craft. And then to see a lot of those same people, like literally same names that I've seen write these long posts about how important it is to embrace the beauty of code, and to make sure that you're doing it right and elegantly, and using the most beautiful tools for the job, to see that immediate about face to, well, why would you look at the code? Like, you can make so much of it that it doesn't, is of course it's going to be bad. That was weird, I think, to sort of have that realization settle in fully yesterday, that one, I think there's a certain category of person who's, their goal is to be at the center of the discourse, and they kind of don't care what we're talking about. And that's, whatever. It's not my game, but I'm not gonna call people out on what they're into. Everybody needs hobbies. But I think the part that gets me is that, we've gotten to a point as a community, and perhaps more broadly as like society in general, where our level of discernment between who is an entertainer and who is an authority has really shifted, and we're not able to make those separations anymore. So you've got people who are clearly, they're not like they're not teaching. They're just sort of having opinions, and their reason for having opinions is not to better the community or the discourse. It's to prolong the discourse because the discourse is what pays their bills. And I think that is painfully obvious when you look at things like politics, but it's also really obvious when you look at a lot of the influencer circles and when you look at the way people discuss code or startups or venture funding or anything in our industry that has a lot of money tied up in it. There are people whose more or less sole function seems to be wading into the middle of discourse and having really, really strong opinions that they will absolutely not hold to if the money moves in a different direction. And that lack of internal consistency is easy to spin as, well, I received new information and I made different choices. And like, I would make the argument that in many cases I've shifted the way that I think about things because I received new information and made different choices. And so I don't know what it is that feels different about me, but something smells different in a lot of those discussions, where it feels less like I received new information and made different choices, and more like people stopped paying attention when I was talking about the other thing. So now I talk about this thing. And again, I like, people have their hobbies, and I think that's fine. And yeah, I think like the key point in building with AI agents is supposed to increase efficiency. But like, I saw a discussion that, and this is one of the things that I really wanted to, like, I don't know who's the right person to talk to about this, because it's not a, like, I don't want this to be a gotcha, but it kind of feels like a gotcha, where you say like, okay, so the goal is increased efficiency. For how long? And for whom, right? Because the thing that I am smelling here is kind of a symptom of what I've seen in a lot of executive and leadership rooms, where the upside is only measured by quarter. So if you think about like, if the way we're measuring efficiency or productivity is like, how many lines of code can I produce? We've played that game before. We had management consultants in the 80s and 90s who would go around in companies and say, yeah, we measure our employees' output by lines of code. And the resounding realization after that era was that is one of the most useless ways to measure the value of what somebody creates, right? And generally speaking, the best code is really succinct and doesn't require a lot of lines of code, and generally requires a lot of thinking in order to make it really good. And so if you're measuring by only output in terms of lines of code, then you are not measuring in a way that's genuinely measuring value. You're measuring activity. And activity is very different than value, right? So similarly, if we look at the number of tokens somebody is using as the measure of their value, we're running into the same problem where, if the only thing that we care about is number of tokens being used, then the incentive that's being created is spin up 500 agents and have them all running 24 hours a day doing whatever, literally whatever. Have one write specs and then spin up agents to work on the specs it's created, and then spin up another one to measure the outputs of what those are doing, get based on the spec that was generated, and then measure up, build another one that looks at the output of the evals and then makes more work based on what the result of the evals is. And at no point is a human looking at this. And in almost every case, most of that code is going to be useless. But you spun up hundreds of agents and you use billions of tokens, and by all metrics that anybody's currently measuring, you were brilliantly productive. Like, wow, 24-hour a day output. Amazing. Did any of it matter? Did any of it do anything? Is any of it actually improving the quality of the product or increasing the value that's experienced by the people that use the product, or increasing the efficiency of your team, making it so that other people can work in the code more effectively? And I think the answer to all those questions in a lot of these cases is no. It's doing exactly the opposite. But because we only measure quarter by quarter, it doesn't matter, because those negative downsides won't be felt until next quarter or maybe next year. And that'll be somebody else's problem, because the system will have moved on by then. And I worry a little bit that we're in another one of those cycles where the thing we're focused on is not the thing that's important, because we have a new and shiny thing and there's a metric, right? And because nobody's done any studies of what that metric indicates, it's a thing that's really easy for a leadership team to align on. You can look at a metric like number of tokens used and say, that's measurable. We can say this number, good or bad. And based on that number, good or bad, we can make choices about what to do with the company with confidence. And that's all a leadership team is ever really looking for, is confidence that they're making the right choice, because you live in an inherently ambiguous world when you're in leadership. Everything has upsides and downsides and trade-offs and long-term effects and short-term effects. And you have to try to figure out how to like surf that wave. And every decision you make is a point in time decision that probably won't work the same if you make it again later. So you're always doing things for the first time for the current, the current circumstances. You're in a unique situation almost every time, no matter how similar it is to other situations you've been in the past. So the challenge then becomes, if you are in fact sitting in a space where you can't measure anything, then when something comes along that promises to let you measure everything, it feels very intoxicating, and you want it. You've got some certainty, you've got some clarity on what to work on. And you can say, yes, we have an objective measure by which we can determine which employees are good and which employees are bad. And since we did all that overhiring during COVID, we need to reset the scales a little bit and get our pay band back within error bars, and cut our burn a little bit. And you can just say like, well, okay, great. Well, these tokens are an objective measure. Let's look at AI usage as the measure of who's keeping up with change. And those future facing employees will be the ones that we keep. Doesn't matter if those future facing employees have done anything of value. It just matters that they had a lot of activity. And the other thing that's really sad about that is, like, I could probably set up a Ralph Wiggum loop to do effectively nothing, but I could burn millions of tokens and score really high on the internal leaderboard of who's using the most AI inside of a company. And I would basically contribute nothing of value to the company, but it would still make me look like one of the more valuable participants. And so I think the thing that I'm worried about, right, is that because this is new and shiny and quantifiable, it's superseding all of the really hard lessons that we've learned before, which are that it doesn't matter what you build if nobody wants to use it. The thing that you build is only as good as its ability to be continually adapted and improved over time. And the thing that I worry about is, like, we're in this mad dash right now to make everything agent friendly. And the way that we're making things agent friendly is with stuff like skills. Now, a skill is a file with markdown in it, and that markdown includes context and instructions and the things that an agent would need to be able to perform a task. But okay, let's play this out. Like, let's think about this logically. You've got a skill file. Now, that skill file is a set of instructions, and you build an app. Your app has dozens, hundreds of skills. You have agents running that do all of these things. And so let's think about what a typical app would have. You've got some kind of business logic. You've got your user dashboard. You've got your billing. You've got your newsletter system. You've got your homepage with your marketing. You've got product pages and feature comparisons and all those things. And theoretically, that should all be tied together in some way through user accounts or cookies, some kind of tracking, so that you can see when somebody first arrives on your homepage, and you can sort of see the journey they go on before they convert to a paid customer because that'll give you some information about how to make better decisions. Once they're in the app, you want to be able to see how they are interacting with different things, which features they use that cause them to, upgrade or downgrade or churn or renew, like all these metrics that are really useful for the sales team, that are really useful for product, so that you can focus on like, oh, everybody falls out of our app here because this feature is really hard to use, right? All the stuff that happens inside of a regular company as it grows. If the way that you are measuring churn, for example, is that you've written a skill and the skill has maybe a bunch of context, links to APIs, whatever, but the general idea is it says, you are a product specialist who's focusing on churn rates. You are to look at the data coming in from these APIs and determine which features are causing users to renew or churn, and make suggestions based on your findings. As a skill, right? That's really exciting because you've taken this thing that would have been a lot of manually wiring stuff up. It would be a pain in the butt, and you've turned that into something that is now theoretically automated away by the agent. But let's say you're getting an inconsistent result. How do you maintain that? You change something somewhere else in the system. How do you update that skill, right? Is it somebody has to come in and edit the pros? And how do you check for regressions? How do you check that when you go in and change it from saying you are a marketing specialist to you are a churn analyst, that doesn't cause the agent to do something different, right? How do you make sure that like all of the previous results that you're getting are still internally consistent, so that you're not wildly changing the way that you're measuring your entire app, which, obviously, if the goal is to get predictable, continual growth, if you're ripping up all of the data and starting fresh every time you make an update to your app, you don't get that picture of in time. You only get from the last time we updated it until we changed it the second time. So that then starts to paint this picture of like, okay, and that's just one tiny example. If the whole app is this series of interwoven skills, how do we know that things are working, right? We get evals, but the evals are also pros that say you're a quality assurance agent and your job is to check this output and make sure that it's, makes sense according to these criteria. Great. But when you edit it, how do you make sure that doesn't cause it to get completely different results for the same data that was going in before? So then you add evals to the evals? Where does it stop? And how do you start to get any kind of confidence that what you're doing is in any way maintainable into the future? Because if the entire repo is a collection of markdown files and everything is being generated on the fly by agents based on the latest updates to the skills, you don't have confidence that the thing you're doing is going to be repeatable. And this is one of the reasons why we've always relied on code for this stuff. And it's one of the reasons that code is such a powerful medium, is that it is deterministic. If you put the numbers in at the end of the pipeline, they're going to come out the same way every time because the code is deterministic. You know that like same input, same output, as long as the logic doesn't change. And you can validate that with a function that says, here are the inputs, run this function and expect the output to match what the function has always done. And if that ever changes, you get a big red flag immediately. So looking at a world where what we're saying is we'll just vibe code everything continually, and it's okay because it'll be a little bit broken sometimes, but we'll always fix it. The problem that agents seem to be having is this context collapse, where at a certain point you've got so much going into the context window that it starts to get confused and lose track of things and make mistakes. Well, humans are the same way, right? If you've ever looked at a code base that has more than a few thousand lines of code in it, you're almost certainly not able to hold the entire context of the entire code base in your head at any given time. And so if you're running without tests, if you're running without some kind of quality assurance layer, or even just another person who steps through and does the steps to make sure that they still function, you start to hit regressions, and then your users will let you know, and you have to go and fix them. And like, we've always run companies with poor quality assurance management. But we've never quite been in a place where you can't really confidently plug those leaks because all the leaks are pros. And the pros usually executes the same way, but like sometimes it doesn't. And it's not always clear how or why you get different outputs based on the same input, but you do know that it's always a little bit different. And so what does that mean? Like, what does that mean for the industry? And I'm not saying it's not a solvable problem, but I'm saying it's a really big concern I have right now as we move away from shipping code toward shipping instructions. Because for anybody who's ever worked in a company, one of the hardest communication media is written word. Like, the English language is so flexible. It's a incredibly versatile way to communicate. And there's a million ways to interpret what seem like very simple sentences. You can put double meanings. You can accidentally imply something that you didn't mean to imply. There's like cultural context, right? Like if you use certain words in certain groups, they mean different things, right? Like a good phrase is out of pocket, right? If you say out of pocket, depending on who you're talking to, that can mean I am unavailable for calls, or it can mean like you're out of line right now. What you're doing is uncool. Do the machines know the difference? And does that mean that like language needs to evolve to have no nuance? Because that's what code is, right? Code doesn't have nuance. You can't interpret it multiple ways. It either runs or it doesn't. So I think the thing that I worry about more than anything is that we are taking a really, really long walk around to rewriting code, and that all of this LLM stuff, while it is very exciting, it's not maintainable long term if it's the only thing in the chain. And I'm really low confidence that we're going to see entire apps deployed as like markdown repos that are maintained by dozens or hundreds of people. And I think, the dream of everybody builds their own personal software, we know that that's not true, because it's been possible to build your own personal software for a really long time. Like, even when you could one-click deploy a MySpace, people still didn't do it, right? Everybody can go to Squarespace and get a website for their business. People still don't do it, right? Like, even if it is possible to say, make me an app that solves my exact problem, like, people won't do it. They will happily pay somebody to solve their problems for them. That's why SaaS exists and why it will continue to exist. And the other thing is, like, maintenance is hard. And even if you can one-shot your internal reporting app, at some point somebody's going to notice that when you made the change, all of the data doesn't line up anymore. Right? At which point they're going to start to say, what's going on here? And you're going to have to actually maintain that app. And now you have to decide, do you have bandwidth to actually maintain this internal app, or should you be focusing on the external app that actually pays your bills, which leads you back around to SaaS? Like, yeah, sure, you can build an analytics app, but who's going to maintain it? Because it's going to need maintenance. Somebody's got to work on it. It's generally a lot easier to just use Google Analytics, despite all of its flaws and shortcomings, than it is to build your own, because that's not your business. That's not the thing you do. That's not what makes you money. It's not what brings value to you or your customers. It's just a thing that you have to deal with. So a slightly shittier version that you can pay a subscription fee for is going to outrank the little like vibe coded thing that you can put together. Like, yeah, it's cool, but it doesn't live long. Again, it's, if we're only thinking quarterly, this stuff is magical. But if you start thinking on the term of years, I just don't know. I don't know how it works. Yeah, I'm out here rambling a little bit. But wait, what's going on? Yeah, I mean, oh, thanks, Braden. Let's see, what do you think? Software organization, workforce service-based in 2026, 27. Hiring situation has changed. New people aren't hired as much. Bar has increased. So this, I think, is a good question, because like, we're already seeing some companies realize that doubling down on new people is going to be really important. Like, IBM just made a big investment in hiring early career folks because they realized that there was even if you don't, like, even if theoretically the junior skill set is replaced by LLMs, you still need people to come in and become managers or product people or whatever. And you can't have an entire organization of senior people, because senior people will not report to people that they see to be their like equivalent. And if you need layers of management, which at any large company you will, you're going to need a leadership team overall. You're going to need different divisions for the different areas of the business. You're going to need product ownership, and then you're going to need teams working on different features within those things. If everybody from the top to the bottom of the org perceives themselves to be the same layer, you've got anarchy, right? You need people who are less experienced, who are willing to accept that they have to work their way up the ladder. If the person who is in the C-suite has the same level of seniority as the person who's reporting to their, great grandskip, they're not going to do it. They'll, it doesn't work. You get open rebellion and, so even just from a straight up, like, companies need to function as groups of people standpoint, you need juniors, and they're going to realize that and fix it. Let me see. Everyone wanting to measure everything. I mean, this is like the constant state of the human condition, is that we want to quantify the world, right? There's a non-trivial portion of humanity that believes if we can just figure out all of the formula, that we will solve all of the issues, and I think the belief there is like, there's secret math to the universe that dictates how, we could solve energy and make it infinite and free, and we could solve all of the medical problems because there's math that makes protein folding work, or whatever, whatever it is. And like, there's a certain amount of like truth to that, but there's not really any math that, let's play out AI. Like, they believe that there's a certain amount of math they can do that will unlock super intelligence, and that super intelligence will create what they call a post-scarcity society. But there is no math that you can do that will make somebody like Elon Musk or Sam Altman suddenly decide that the people they have been exploiting and not paying and treating as less than deserve the same level of comfort as they have, right? Their wealth is a symbol to them of how worthy they are. And so in a system that's post-scarcity, it would require them to give back, because in a post-scarcity society, if we don't have the need for human labor, and we don't have the need for jobs or taxes or any of those things, because super intelligence has worked it all out, what do people do to survive, right? Like, we just have to give them stuff. And so if everybody just gets a house, how does your house become a status symbol? If everybody just gets free public transportation, or everybody gets a car, or whatever we decide the right choice is, then how do you make it a status symbol to have the nicest car? How do you show off how expensive you can afford to eat if, all the restaurants are free to people now? How do you say that your job as a finance guy is more important than the job of an artist if the artists are also making a livable wage, right? How do you get people to do jobs that they don't want to do and that assumes that there are jobs, but like no amount of math is going to suddenly make billionaires go, oh, you know what? I don't need this much anymore. I should let other people have some, right? There's no formula that you're going to discover that suddenly makes them willing to distribute the wealth, right? The closest thing we have is legal systems, and we know how everybody feels about those. So like the most hope that we have is that the AGI comes around and it says, well, actually you need regulation, and that the billionaires for some reason will listen to the AI if they won't listen to the people. But I think, the belief that you can sort of quantify away all problems is very real. And I've watched it happen in a lot of startups too. Like, when I joined Gatsby, I remember they would do these weird things where they'd like put together a spreadsheet that they were like, oh, well, we've solved salary discrepancies by running the cost of a gallon of milk as the differentiating thing against some base salary. And, they were like, oh, see, so this is fair. Like you have no understanding of humans. Like humanity doesn't work that way when you say, hey, person, do this work. And because of where your feet are on the ground on the planet, we're going to pay you 30% of what we pay this other guy whose feet are on the street in San Francisco. It doesn't make sense, right? And it doesn't really bring in, like they say, well, it's geographically adjusted. It's like, okay, well, if we're going to geographically adjust, we should probably adjust for family size. We should probably adjust for actual need. We should probably adjust for generational wealth. But they don't want to adjust for any of that because that would hurt them. They only want to adjust for things that benefit them, like paying people less because they're far away. Right. So it's, the other problem is that they only want math that maths in their direction. But yeah, this is Bridge, this is a good point because legalese is its own dialect because it has to be ultra clear and it's so difficult to parse because they have very tortuously designed phrasing that cannot be misinterpreted. There is broad precedent saying this is exactly what we mean when we say whatever. And I'm not going to pretend to be able to summon up some legalese from memory here, but when I look at contracts, I do enough of them now that when I work with my lawyer to write the contracts for Code TV, the first time I looked at it, I was like, why don't we just write this in plain language? And I made a suggestion. He looked at it, he goes, okay, but here are 3 ways you can interpret that. And there is no court case that sets a precedent for what this means. So if we say it this way, I can point to this court case and this court case, which have agreed that this phrase means this thing. And that's why we have to write it that way. And I was like, this sucks. Shouldn't that be brought KPIs? Because in business, more tokens should mean less productivity, especially since all devs agree most of it is joint. Well, I mean, it depends on what you're optimizing for, right? If we say, because what we're seeing is that companies are issuing not quality edicts like number of tickets closed, or I mean, even that's a bad, it kind of comes down to once you've set a metric, people will game that metric. There's I don't remember which person it is, but somebody's law says that that which gets measured gets managed, and as soon as something becomes a metric, it ceases to be valuable as a piece of information. And that's true. If you say, okay, well, what we measure on is number of issues closed. Well, congratulations, you just created an explosion of the number of issues being open, because people will now open an issue for every single thing they do, just so that they have more closed issues on their list. Get a cup of coffee, closed issue, right? They'll do whatever they can to make sure that they have the high score because you've created a gameable metric. The only way to make a non-gameable metric, in my opinion, is to make them all tandem metrics. I believe that if you want a metric like higher conversion, or let's say, let's take one that I've actually argued against, blog views, right? We wanted to increase blog traffic at one of the companies that I worked at. And so the idea was that metric is there to incentivize us to write more articles. That was kind of the underlying thing. But the way we were going to measure it is we were going to say blog views. And I said, okay, great. What if we just start running celebrity gossip on our blog? Millions of views. What do you think? They were like, well, that's not very useful. I said, interesting. So what if we start running tech gossip? Millions of views. They were like, still not useful. I was like, okay, so you don't care about views, right? And so then it starts becoming more of a discussion about what do we care about? And then you can start to design some things. And a tandem metric would be, we want blog views to increase, but in tandem with that, we expect that is also going to increase new signups. We should see a correlated bump in signups to the platform, because that would mean that the new blog traffic are the right people who are interested in the product, so that we should expect that if more people arrive to find information that's relevant to them and to the product that we're selling, that they will then choose to try the product, right? That's a good tandem metric. Similarly, like video views or like meetup attendees, right? Like if you throw a meetup and you give away free food, you're going to get a lot of meetup attendees. I think there are people whose entire sustenance in San Francisco is like going between meetups to get free food, and they have literally no care whatsoever. Like the last time I was in San Francisco, it was kind of a mind-boggling experience because I met people who, as far as I can tell, make all of their money by gaming hackathons and eat all of their meals by going to local meetups and getting free food. And I was kind of like, part of me was impressed and part of me was horrified that we've built what is effectively a cottage industry of like leeching off of startup funds by basically eating the free food. And so okay, so then if you want that to be more valuable, like what makes a meetup worth attending so that the people who are there are actually somewhat engaged, somewhat interested, right? And it's raining. And I think you have to be a little bit deeper about it. It can't just be, well, we rented a cool space and we got really good food and hundreds of people showed up. Cool. Did any of them sign up? Did any of them try the product? Did any of them respond to the email that you sent out afterward asking if they wanted to get some free tokens? Did anybody claim the incentive that you provided? Like, because like if I serve great food and make it free, like, yeah, I'll go to your meetup. What was it about? I don't remember what it was about. I just remember that I ate for free. And so similarly, like AI usage should have some tandem metric with it. Does it increase the number of users who are retained on the platform? Is it decreasing our support burden? Is it increasing the level of people who expand their account? Is it decreasing churn? What is the metric that would show that the increased output is actually having an impact on the business and it isn't just noise? Because if all we're measuring is lines of code, like I said, I can make a lot of code. It's really easy for me actually to generate tons of code, especially if I'm not thinking about what good it does. But if I can ship 2 or 3 lines of code and notably increase the user experience and decrease the amount of churn, the bottom line of the company just went up. We'll see a correlated bump in revenue, in net revenue. That's good. That's a very good thing. And then it kind of doesn't matter how many lines of code we ship, right? But obviously you can't make everybody's metric revenue goes up, because then you can't measure how revenue goes up. So this is how you get into sub metrics, and every team wants to own their metric. And this is why this stuff is hard. This is why it's so complicated, is you can't just say like, okay, well, as a company, our goal is to make a product that is good enough that people want to buy it. And so everybody's metric is revenue. Because then if the marketing team is doing a great job and the product team is doing a bad job, the marketing team for a decent amount of time before everybody catches on will be able to go out and sell the promise of the product, even if the product's not quite living up to that promise, right? So eventually that other shoe drops. And if you're not measuring, say churn or how quickly people activate and start using different features, or what your retention of active users is, all of that sort of would give you a pretty quick indication that like a lot of people are coming in, but then they immediately drop off and become inactive once they're in the product. Well, great. That's a sign that something's missing, right? But so you have to have these sub metrics, but they can't exist in isolation. Number of lines of code is an absolutely terrible metric. Number of attendees at a meetup or number of views on the blog is a terrible metric, because it's in isolation, it doesn't give you any information. It gives you negative information, honestly. It's like it's literally telling somebody to do something specifically to game that number, because there's no follow-on of how or why that number is important. So you need that kind of tandem metric, that's something that shapes the data you're going after. But because it's hard, people don't do it. And because they don't do it, we jump to shortcuts. So we say, I don't know, number of lines of code written, and then we're going to have AI scan your emails for who's happiest here, and we'll just fire everybody who's unhappy and unproductive. Okay, well, whatever you want, I guess. Let's see. What are y'all talking about? Yo-yo staffing by analogy to yo-yo dieting. I mean, I do think we definitely do that. The bottle of Lagavulin is not new. That has, where is it? It's over here. That's been there for a while. I should really probably, do that. And yeah, this is a good point, Henri, that if everybody in your company is really, really senior, you also have to pay them at rates that they will stick around for, which gets very hard. So, if you want to make that happen. Yeah, I think we are seeing like people. There's the rumors of people getting like billion-dollar total comp packages at places like Meta, which is obviously an outlier, but it's not an outlier for people to get seven-figure total comp packages. It's definitely a mess out there right now. We'll see. Let's see here. Breathing is signaled. You breathe in order to increase oxygen levels in your lungs and consequently blood, but it's triggered by there being too much carbon dioxide in your lungs. Yep. Organize and attend meetups, and you'd see certain folks making the rounds, sometimes saying night, yep. You get drunk, you get food. But yeah, I think I'm going to be honest. I have no idea what you're talking about. But I think the thing that I've been on, I guess, like an hour of general rant here, but like I'm thinking a lot about the general, like I think I'm ready to concede that AI in code is probably here to stay because it does have a lot of utility. Like I've seen it, I've worked with it a little bit. I think that it would be foolish, I think, to assume that this will all go away. However, I think that I have not seen anything convincing that says to me that we're not going to need code or that we're not going to need people, because everything I've seen where we let if you give a bot a simple instruction, it'll go and build an app and it'll do whatever it was told to do some of the time, and it absolutely cannot keep up as more and more complexity goes in the same way that humans can't keep up if you just keep tossing complexity at them. You need to build systems around that give you the formalized structure that like checks your work and keeps things in check. And so my current future forecast here is that what we're going to see happen is that we will, over some amount of time, watch the industry kind of back its way around into saying that what LLMs are really good at is handling non-deterministic input and at doing things like contextually heavy searches and other activities like that. Like it's great if you've got like human language input at determining probably what the person meant, like well enough that it can answer ask a follow-up question or present a list of options and get it decently right, But as far as like generating the entire business logic of an app and being the testing layer and the evals and the things that keep coming up as like, well, now that you've got AI writing all your code, you need a way to get AI to test all your code. And it's like, I don't think that's going to stick. I don't think that's, and if it does stick, it's going to stick in a way that is significantly more structured than it is right now, because you are not going to get any major industry to adopt something that is not 100% predictable. Like if there is even there's a reason that the banking systems still run on tech from the 70s. It's because they have zero risk tolerance. They have negative risk tolerance. If you do literally anything that is wrong, the consequences are truly disastrous. Like if they put a zero in the wrong place, if they miscount the number of R's in the word strawberry and that's linked to a transaction, they miscount the number of commas, that is a devastating blow to the financial institution that accidentally transfers $1 billion to somebody in a way that they can't legally get back because they are the ones who made the mistake, right? Like this is the reason I think that you still see COBOL getting used, is because those systems got built in a way that's pretty damn bulletproof. And to go in and try to rewrite those systems and make sure that you hit every single edge case that's been covered in the last 60 years, it just isn't going to happen, right? And to think that they would just hand over the keys to agentic AI, like my theory is we will not see fully agentic systems run in the enterprise, in the sense of the app itself is just generated as needed by the agents that understand all the intent of the developers and the users. My doomer take is that if we do put those systems into place, that will be the point that historians look at as the fall of this particular empire. And the point at which some more responsible government body will step in and put a regulated system in that's protected people. It'll be very interesting. Still a lot of overlap in reviewing code, which can still push major lines on the amount of tech debt. Yes, agreed. Security vulnerability of the microwaved apps. Yeah, I mean, this is exactly what I mean. Like how do you really function in a world where like you're being just a constant deluge of like everything coming at you? What do you do, right? Like you can't. I mean, yes, there's, I think, a role for somebody whose entire job is code review. We've seen those people in large organizations, and it's a very valuable role. But that's not what I'm trained in, and it's not really what I want to do. And I think that a lot of developers feel the same way. Like the code review was always the hardest part of the job, and giving up ground to the point where your entire function is code review for AI it's a losing battle, because people are going to get lazy and it's just going to be whatever looks good to me, click, 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 and the garbage will go out. And sure, you can recover quickly. And on like a small app, that's fine. If you ship a mistake and somebody says, hey, it looks like this thing broke, and you go, oh, sorry about that. Hey, robot, please fix, and it'll fix it and it'll go back out. But like that doesn't work on a real estate website when you can accidentally list a house at like half the price, and there's consumer laws out there that say, like, there's that whole thing about the car sale thing where they tricked the agent into saying the car was free or $1 or something like that, and the court kind of held that up to like, well, that's your system, you got to honor it, right? And that is not gonna fly in like any real system, because as soon as an exploit like that exists, everybody will figure out how to exploit it. And if you've got an agent that can be talked into doing things that are against its rule set, somebody's going to figure out how to do. It's like the whole speedrunning community in games. Like if there's an exploit in that game, they're going to find it. They're going to get that tenths of a second so that they can be the world's #1 speedrunner. And if somebody figures out that there's a secret spell that you can speak to the banking agent that will give you free money, they're going to find it. I promise you they will find it, and they will find it fast, and they will exploit the hell out of it, and it'll ruin the financial system. So they're not going to do that. They're like, these people are idiots, but they're not idiots, if that makes sense. All right, we got, man, this mouse is great, except it like takes a second to warm up, and then the scroller is like ripping fast. For a solo founder, small team, what's the better path? Starting a service agency or building a SaaS product, and why? I would say the best thing for a solo founder or small team to build is the thing that is most relevant to their existing expertise and something that's most relevant to their existing expertise and to their network. So when I was first starting, the most logical thing for me to do was to make a service-based agency in the fitness industry, because that was the network I had. I had been building websites for people, and I knew a lot of people in the fitness industry. So I started building the business to make fitness websites for fitness people. And because there were a lot of people who I knew that needed them, I was able to build the flywheel of, I got my first clients, they launched their sites, other people in the industry saw them, they liked them, I got referred. And before I knew it, that was like my whole business. Code TV, I started because I saw, I'd been doing all of the developer relations work. I'd been in the leadership team at a few startups. I'd been working on the marketing side of the house, and I was starting to see how all these different threads tied together. And I saw this particular gap in the market, and I said, we should do this. And my company didn't see the vision. So I left and I started my own thing because it felt like that was what was needed. And fortunately, my hunch was right. My experience bore out, and people have been willing to hire Code TV ever since. So if you have a thing that is the right thing, then that's the thing, and if you don't have an idea, that's the first step. Like, I don't think you can sit down and say, okay, we're a SaaS product. What is our SaaS? Right? You have to go in you have to understand a problem space and a customer, because if you go in saying like, well, what's a customer that really needs something and how can we sell it to them? You're coming in at a strong disadvantage against somebody who's been part of that community and like has deep understanding of it. Right. And you'll see this happen with private equity all the time, where they'll go in and they'll grab businesses, or they'll try to launch businesses in spaces that they're not part of. And the business just feels wrong. Like the things that made it magical get stripped back because of budgetary concerns, or things that make no sense get shoehorned in because they are represented as being like big profit centers. And you watch the community kind of like fade away around that company. So the biggest thing that you need to do if you're starting a business is make sure that you understand what the hell your business is for. Like, what are you building, for who, and how does it make money? Because if you don't have those three things answered, then I don't think you've got a business, right? Like, you've got ambition, but you haven't actually designed a business. And whether that's services or SaaS, it kind of doesn't matter. What matters is that you have a path in your head, right? And a lot of SaaS could start as services, and a lot of services can become SaaS. So the form factor, that's a delivery for the good idea. You can build your way to a good idea, kind of, but you still have to sort of understand a group of people and what their needs are. And I think that if you look around, you'll find some spaces that you're in that you can have that sort of an impact on. But I think it's really important as a creator to know that, like, you don't quit your job and start a company and then ask, what do we build? Right? You got to have that answered before you build the company, because every choice you make needs to be in service of the thing that you're trying to do. Let's see. How do you know your value and how much to be paid as a developer in an organization? I think like your job, this is always one of those things that's really difficult, but the short answer is talk to your peers about money, right? Like it is uncomfortable, especially if the company is really bad at this, but it immediately surfaces the problem in a way that's hard for the company to ignore, which is why companies don't want you to talk about money. In a company that is well managed, they're going to have levels, and in those levels, they're going to have salary bands, and those salary bands should be somewhat transparent. Like it should be pretty clear, and they'll keep everybody at the same levels within the same bands. And so, like, for example, when I was at Netlify, we had defined career ladders, and it was, like there was an entry level role, and then there was like, I can't remember exactly what the titles were, but it was like, we didn't call it junior, but it was basically a junior software engineer. And then we had a software engineer 1, a software engineer 2, senior. It's like senior. And then we had another level, and then we had principal. And each of those had a corresponding like competency level and a salary band. So we expected that like a junior engineer was able to, for example, complete simple tasks on their own and complete more complicated tasks with guidance from a team member. And we expected that they were able to, for example, not have to ask more than once, or ideally once, but definitely not more than twice, on how to solve a given problem. Like when they received information, they internalized it and learned how to like use that information. And we expected that they would be proactive, but not, there was like a lot of things in there. And then as you got into like software engineer 1, software engineer 2, it started getting into your ability to do like more complex tasks without guidance. And then it was like groups of related tasks. As you get into senior, it's taking like big projects and breaking them into tasks. As you get into like the higher level, staff was the other one. So staff, and then principal. And so like staff, we expected you, like your job at that point is like coordinating people. You should be able to make sure that the juniors are able to do tasks, and you're the one who keeps the rest of the team unblocked, and you're the one who goes to leadership. Like principals should be making company-wide decisions about how technology is implemented. And like there was all that kind of stuff. It all came with salary bands, right? And we would look as a company and say, okay, so here's everybody on my team, here are all their levels, here are all their salaries, and everybody needs to be plus or minus 15% of like this level. And for easy math, I'm going to throw out a really low number. And let's say that like a senior engineer, the band is $100,000. And so 15% plus or minus means that the highest paid person in the senior band should be no more than $115,000. And the lowest paid person shouldn't be no more than $85,000. So we would look and we would see like, oh shit, actually we got somebody at $80,000 here, and we've got another person who's at say $130,000. So they're way out of band. Are they doing enough work to merit? And let's say that would put them into the next level up. Are they doing work at a level that merits them getting that bump, which would then put them in band? Or do we need to have a conversation about like, they're being paid out of band? Like we need to either bring that down or we need to up their responsibility, right? And I think the tricky part is if you start out early, this is really easy to fix. If you start out late and you've got like half your team is criminally underband and half your team is criminally overband, and you just gave everybody the exact same title and rank because you didn't want to think about it, now you get to have these really uncomfortable conversations because you have to actually assess that like, yeah, this person is doing they're pulling a lot of weight here, but they weren't very good at negotiation. So they're really, really underband, but they are really valuable to the company. And you got this other person who's a great negotiator, but honestly, they're kind of mediocre. They're just kind of skimming along at their level. Do you then leapfrog this person above the other person and just have the conversation? Do you have to do this uncomfortable reset where like everybody in the company gets a raise to get them up inside a band? And like, so when I was at Netlify, they actually made this choice. I was honestly very impressed with the Netlify team for this. They made the choice when they got bands established. I think they had a couple hundred people working there. There's a lot of folks who weren't in band, like because managers had been making decisions and the managers weren't coordinating with each other. They were just working with the information they had. And some managers believe that you should pay people as little as possible so that there's room for them to grow. And some managers believe you should pay people as much as possible because it's so hard to get people raises. Neither of them is wrong. It's just different philosophies. And because we didn't have a guiding like company philosophy, we had really wildly different results. And so some people, as a result of that re-leveling, got like $40,000 raises. And some people got told that they would probably never get a raise again as long as they worked at the company, because they were already way over band and weren't performing at a level that was going to get them any higher, right? And that was a hard thing to do, and it caused, like, some people who were over leveled decided to quit because they felt like it was unfair that they wouldn't get raises anymore. And it was like, well, it's kind of unfair that you get paid 30% more than your colleagues for doing less work, right? We didn't ask you to take less money. We just said we're going to wait for, like, eventually this will catch up and you'll be in band again. But in the meantime, this is what you make. And that was it's hard. Like, what's the right choice? And so my general response is, if you talk about money, it forces that conversation early. Because if it turns out that you are being paid half of what one of your colleagues is getting paid, and they can't give you a justification as to why, other than you suck at negotiation, they should fix that. They should definitely fix that. Or you should get a new job and negotiate better next time, right? Like, it's very hard to say what the situation is, but I think having that open discussion with your colleagues about what everybody is making, and getting clear on, like, my specific role, like, I was hired at, level 3, and if you're at level 3, like, what do we make? Are we close to the same? And if you find that it's really egregiously out of whack, that's a conversation to have with your manager, and your manager should be escalating that up the chain and saying, like, hey, we got a problem here. Like, we've got people who are paid wildly different for the same work. We need to address that, right? And then the company should address it. And if they don't, at any point, the company can choose not to handle these problems. And at that point, it becomes a pretty big red flag for you, where maybe you don't need to, like, quit and protest, but I would definitely start looking. Because if a company gets faced with, we're paying people unfairly, and their answer is to, like, clam up and not address it, what's going to happen when they have, like, real bad problems? Probably nothing, right? They're going to sweep it under the table when one of the leadership team does something terrible to an employee at a company event or something. Like, they'll be like, well, he's a really good guy though, right? Like, and you'll see that kind of shit. So it's important to look at the way they behave when the problems are fixable, as a pretty good indicator of how they're going to handle the problems that are much harder to fix. So to answer this question, Jacob, I would say just start it as soon as you can. Like, if you're doing a startup, just start it, right? Like, if it's just you, like, I'm paying myself this much money because this is what I do. Like, these are my responsibilities. And you hire somebody else and you say they have half the responsibility. Their level is now, whatever, 2 levels below mine. And we're saying that the band for that is this. You can build it as you go. It doesn't have to be, like, super robust right out of the gate, but I think it needs to be clear. Like, expectations need to be clear, because if you're going to bring in, like, the way I think about it is, like, I'm at Code TV. Code TV currently doesn't have any full-time employees. So I decide I'm going to bring in my first full-time employee. And it's, let's say, a friend of mine that I've worked with for a long time. And they tell me that currently they're making $250,000 a year. And I go, that's steep, but I'll make it work. And so I hire them at $250,000 a year. Well, now Code TV doesn't necessarily have, like, infinite income. So I would need to hire my second employee. And my second employee comes in and they're technically at the same level, but they only ask for $120,000 a year. And I say, oh, thank God. Yeah, absolutely. You're hired. So now I got somebody who's getting paid roughly half of what the other person is getting paid. And they are both doing, let's say, the same amount of work. But, and they both got exactly what they asked for. They asked for a salary. I granted them their salary. As far as I'm concerned, I did exactly what they wanted. But because I didn't have that hard conversation up front, like, I should have thought through, okay, well, if he's asking me for $250,000 and I need to maybe hire again, can I justify paying every software engineer that comes into this company $250,000? And if I can't, then I need to be honest now, because otherwise I'm forcing myself into a situation where this developer is either going to be egregiously overpaid, or I am going to be so strapped to hire because we're going to have to make so much money in between hiring rounds that everybody's going to be overworked at all points. And you'll get a million different things that people will say, like any employee should make roughly 10 times their salary for the company. So if somebody comes on for 250 grand and they're making an additional 2.5 million for the company every year, fine, easy, pay them 250 grand. That's a no brainer. But it's usually less clear cut than that, right? Like, and so every company is going to be different, but I think that clarity starts as soon as it can start, and asking those questions doesn't require you to have a formal system, right? Like you don't have to form an HR department to think about, can I afford to hire 3 more people at this rate? Or do I need to maybe say like 180 is the top of what we can afford right now? And I understand if that doesn't work for you, but unfortunately I can't commit to 250 a year, right? Those types of conversations suck to have, but it sucks way more to lay people off, and it sucks way more to get sued for like salary discrimination or something like that. So it's very, very important. Linus Torvald says, vibe coding is good, but not a place to stay as a dev. Grasp the concepts. I mean, I do think like as a universal truth, I think it's pretty important to, it's important as a human being to think about why things work, right? And just universally, asking why and digging into the underlying structures and reasons for what makes the world around you go is, I can't think of anything with more long-term value. Because if you think about it, right, like every piece of value that we can deliver is built on our ability to discern what's happening in the world around us. And if the world around us is being built from a series of forces that we don't understand, it gets really hard, right? You feel like you're always reading tea leaves or kind of like licking your finger and sticking it up to see which way the wind is blowing and kind of making a best guess. But as you start to understand why things work and what they actually do, your decisions become much more informed, and informed decisions tend to be more directionally accurate. So even though you won't be able to predict the future, you'll be much more likely to not be wildly wrong, right? So, I think it's very, like, I've never been sad that I learned how something worked. And I've almost always been able to leverage the understanding of how something worked into some kind of benefit. Even like silly stuff, like I really like to learn how to cook certain things. And that has turned out to be a really strong networking capability for me, because I can cook big dinners at my house and bring people over. And it's an excuse to spend some time with somebody that, it wouldn't have been as easy to hang out with them at a meetup where there were hundreds of people around, or it wouldn't have been as easy to go to a restaurant where you got to yell down the table or something. And being able to have that like intimate conversation where it's 6 people around a dinner table is really something special. And had I not learned to cook, it would have been more difficult to make those situations happen. With code, it's the same thing. Every piece of code I've learned, like people would tell me, oh, you don't need to learn JavaScript because, the real programming happens in the back end. And they were like, you should learn PHP or .NET or Java or whatever. Don't bother learning CSS because CSS is just for style, and like, who cares about style? Don't bother learning HTML because React does everything you need. Don't bother learning anything because AI just makes it happen for you. And all of those statements are for a certain value of true. You can get by without knowing any of that stuff. And I can build a career without understanding, I don't need to know how to cook to be able to build a network. There are other ways I could have done it, but it's a thing that gave me an opportunity that I otherwise wouldn't have had. And understanding JavaScript allowed me to debug some things that that otherwise would have been like really a mystery because I didn't have the underlying understanding. Being able to read JavaScript made React that much easier for me to climb into, because when it didn't work, I understood what JavaScript was supposed to do. So it was easier for me to understand if the thing that was happening was because I had done the JavaScript wrong, or if because I was doing React wrong. And even being able to discern, like, where do I start looking for the problem? As things get more complex, that's like a superpower. I don't know if maybe you have the same experience, but like, people will tell me they weren't able to figure a thing out, and then I Google it, and I may, for whatever reason, like, I find answers when I search for things, and then people will be like, how did you do that? That's like exactly what I searched. And I'm like, well, what did you search? And they'll show me, and their search was like maybe a little more vague, or maybe they didn't know they didn't know the jargon, so like they weren't able to use the phrase that like triggers the right subreddit to come up or something. Like, it's not stuff that is necessarily like life or death. You can always figure it out. You keep asking, you Google it a few more times and something comes up. But like, I remember being in situations with code where I didn't even know what I didn't know. Like, I was looking at something and I was like, this is so mysterious and opaque to me that I don't actually know what to even Google. Like, it's unclear to me what I should be searching to even start to tease this apart. And, back then, what you would do is you would go to a forum. Like, I remember I'd spend a lot of time on W3 Schools because it was one of the only places I knew that was active. And I'd go on the W3 Schools forum and I would post a block of code, and I'd be like, I'm going to be honest with y'all, I don't know what this is. Like, I don't even know how to like sort of interpret what's going on here. Can somebody just tell me the words that I would use to describe this so that I can search in the right way? And 9 times out of 10, somebody would very graciously explain the whole block of code to me. But other times somebody would say, oh, what you're looking for is recursion, or what you're looking for is currying, or just a word that you don't, why would I know that, right? Until you've learned it. Why would you, whoever needs to know what currying is? You don't. But once you know it, it unlocks some patterns that allow you to do some things that make your life a little bit easier, right? It's little stuff like that you don't really think about, but learning how that stuff works gives you these tiny advantages. And so in code, in business, in sales and marketing and product and all these things, like, if you start to stop thinking about it as an obstacle to be overcome and start thinking of it as like a puzzle that you can solve. And when the sales people are talking about, what they need, figure out what they mean when they say those things. Like, when they start talking about the what do they call it? The MoCo, or they start talking about the what is it? SQLs. They start talking about churn. They start talking about expansion. Like, learn what those words mean and learn why they're so invested in those words, and then start thinking about how those words really translate directly to other stuff that you want to do that has programming words tied to it, or that has product words tied to it. And similarly, when you talk to the marketing team, when you talk to the leadership team, like, they've all got these things that are important to them, and they have jargon and context and an understanding of what they're trying to do and why. If you can tease that out, suddenly you're speaking, you kind of become multilingual inside of a company. And if you can translate between sales and marketing and product and engineering, you gain a lot of value right out of the gate, because you'll first of all, you'll realize that you're very rarely arguing with anybody. You're just using different language. Like, if what sales is demanding is they need something to sell, and they're not getting enough SQLs and conversion is low, and you're saying, like, we can't ship any features because there's so much tech debt that it takes us forever to get through code review, you really just said the same thing. Your velocity is down. You're not delivering stuff fast enough, right? But because everybody's using different language, we as developers will say things like, well, we don't care what sales needs. We need to fix the quality of the product first. And sales will say, well, we don't care if the code is pretty. We just care that we have something to sell, right? But really, what you're both saying is, if we cleaned up this process so that we could deliver faster, everybody would be happier. And it changes the way you talk. It changes the way you interact with these experiences. And I think it's going to remain true that no matter what tool we're using to do the thing. We could go and generate a website with Webflow or Squarespace or WordPress or whatever, and it would generate the code for us. Now the agents will generate the code for us. But at the end of the day, when you get into the real customization and you want to make it truly yours, and you've got some unique ideas that you want to try something that you haven't seen before, being able to climb into that code and interact with it and understand what it's doing is going to give you a huge advantage over somebody who can't and is trying to come up with the right words to ask. Even if you just understand the concepts well enough that you can say to the agent, okay, I want to set up a view transition so that we have an animation between this state and this state. How is somebody who doesn't know what those concepts are going to describe that, right? Like, animate it. It's going to go, okay, and then animate something. It's like, well, no, animate this thing and this thing. And then it's going to animate that thing and that thing. Like, if you can use the words, then it's going to look up the right things and it's going to implement the right specs. Like, understanding is never going to be a disadvantage. And it was almost always, regardless of the tools, going to be something that allows you to outperform somebody who doesn't have that understanding. So anyways, do your homework. What advice do I have for a new grad in the current market and the competitiveness of it? Ship things and meet people. Like, I talk about this a lot, so I won't spend too much time on this, but the way to stand out in a market that is very noisy and very crowded and competitive is to be somebody who is consistently there doing stuff. Like, the vast majority of noise is people saying, look at me, look at me. And when they say that, they're not showing anything. They're just kind of standing there going like, give me a shot. I've got so much potential. If you instead build stuff and say, look at this thing I built, people will notice that the difference between you and the people who are just yelling is that you're always saying, I want to show you this thing I built. And everybody else is saying, give me a chance to build something. I got so much potential. If you are a friendly and supportive member of a community, you're networking. If you are sharing things that you've built and you are making deliberate progress toward improving the skills that you want to do professionally, every single project you ship is another piece of evidence to somebody that you're going to keep showing up and doing this thing. And it's going to be really frustrating because it all happens very slowly until it happens very fast. But if you can stay consistent and stay active in those communities and stay positive and share what you can and trade knowledge out as freely as you're able to, and don't be arrogant and don't be scared. Just be out there, be friendly, be curious, and keep building, and it will solve that problem. Like, somebody's going to say, I've seen a whole lot of cool little projects from this person, and every one I see is better than the one before it. This is somebody with a lot of promise. Let's give him a shot. And that's a big differentiator from somebody who keeps saying, like, if you give me a shot, I'll deliver. That's a big leap of faith. Show me that you deliver, actively deliver. And I'm so much more willing to give you that opportunity. Series of puzzles to solve, finite games, and then there's the overarching. Yes, I mean this. So this is, Bridge. I feel like one of these days you and I need to just sit down and drink scotch and talk. But I think like this is if you can embrace life as this adventure that will never end until you die, it makes it so much more interesting because you stop going from thinking about all of this as like, if I can just lock these things down, it'll all be solved, which is what I think that we were talking earlier about people who think they can quantify the world and solve all the puzzles. You don't want the puzzles to be solved. If you get to a point where you're out of things to think about and learn and do, you're dead. Like in all functional definitions of the word, like the point of being here is the game of continuing to explore and be a little bit better than you were yesterday and finding something new to dig into and seeing what the thing you learned yesterday unlocks that wasn't available to you today. If you think about, there's this concept of the adjacent possible, which is one that I love and I've talked about a lot, which is that when when you start, you're in a room with two doors, maybe. And when you open one of those doors, you have access to a whole new hallway with all new doors. And if you open the other door, it doesn't close the first door, right? Like if I am sitting in a room and there's two books in front of me, and one of them is on finance and one of them is on software, if I open the finance book, that doesn't mean that the software book bursts into flames and is no longer accessible to me. I can read this one and then I can read this one and I can say, this really wasn't for me, but this was kind of fun. What else could I learn? And then that opens up pathways for new things to learn. And then maybe later I go, actually this was pretty interesting. I should learn more about it. And maybe you learn just some personal finance. Maybe it's not your professional path, but figuring out how to leverage your own knowledge of what's going on with your money to give you more ability to do more things that you care about over here. That's leverage, right? And you may not need it immediately. Maybe a thing that I learned about changing the oil in my little Toyota, or what was a Dodge Ram 50 little pickup truck when I was in high school. I learned how to do that. Do I have a car that needs oil changes now? Yeah. Am I going to do it? No. But could I, if something went wrong? Yeah, I could dig that up and solve that problem. Like if I found myself in a situation where we were trying to team build a car, I could contribute in small ways. I could at least identify some of the core pieces of the thing, even if I couldn't do the work myself. Like these are all, I think, really interesting and your experience of the world can be it can happen in any way that you choose to let it happen. And in my estimation, the best way is to make it into just an eternal playtime, the infinite game. You are always looking at a new opportunity, a new unlock, a new path to travel, a new area to explore. And everything that you've learned is now a tool at your disposal to go and do this thing. I'm sorry, somebody's calling me and they're pretty insistent about it. Give me just 1 second. Is not important at all. It was not my car insurance, but it was about that uninteresting to me. Yeah, why you just build stuff for yourself, even in a good job, just in case you need something to know if you need a new job later. I mean, even if you don't need a new job, like even if you want a new opportunity in the current job, even if you I think the joy of this stuff is that if you're doing it right, and I'm gonna place a heavy asterisk on right because there is no right or wrong. But what I mean by doing it right is feeling. I think about it as like minimizing regret. Like the number of days that you go to bed not feeling like you wish you would have spent that time doing something else, right? And to me, that's doing it right. So if you're doing it right, everything you're doing is rewarding for the sake of doing it. Building a little app is fun because when you build that little app, it's fun, right? You get to show your friends and say, look at this little thing I built. And they go, oh, that's pretty cool. It has no monetary value, maybe, but it has intrinsic value. You were challenged. You learned something new. You got to try out a concept you've been meaning to try, play with some tech that you don't usually get to play with, expand your skill set in some way that may be professionally valuable to you in the future, whatever it is. But all of that work is work that it's like rewarding in and of itself. And because you have done that work, you've now developed additional skill sets that are valuable in different ways. Like you can leverage the things that you do for fun to create new opportunities for yourself in the future. And the way that I look at it is that like those choices are the kinds of things that help you build the snowball that makes you into a force to be reckoned with, right? Like the people that I know that I value their company and their stories and their wisdom the most are the people who they just do stuff. They try things and they don't have to have a justification for it. They're literally just looking around going, that looks fun. I want to try that, you know, and whether that ends up being a cooking class or a trip to Europe or uh, online math classes, or they audit some courses at their local college, it doesn't matter, whatever it is. If you're interested in a thing and you go and do it, you get the reward of like doing a thing that was interesting to you. You also get the reward of now having some expanded or new skill set that you can leverage in ways that you probably can't predict when you first started the thing. I never in a million years would have predicted that my ability to cook was going to have any impact whatsoever on my professional network in tech. But like I said earlier, because I was able to like cook these group dinners, it had a huge impact on my professional network in tech. I never would have guessed in a million years that designing t-shirts for my band was going to have any impact on my future career. I never would have guessed that being the lead singer of a band would have any impact on my future career. But my design ability was able to get me going as a solo web design agency. And my performance experience really helped me when I got into giving public presentations on code and you know, the conference talk circuit. That conference talk circuit ended up being something that was really fun. Also taught me how to like organize information and tell good stories. All of that built up a skill set that led to me being okay at what I'm doing at Code TV. And this that I'm doing now is starting to open up some really weird doors, like things that I wouldn't have expected. Like I'm in the process of, for example, buying a building, a commercial building. And that has led to conversations with like, now I'm talking to people who work in like the film industry proper. I'm like location scouts are interested in the building that I'm buying because it's a soundstage, and the like people who I've worked with as contractors on different Code TV productions are starting to talk about maybe I could be helpful on non-tech productions, right? All of this stuff is nothing I would have ever predicted was going to happen because of the different things that I did. I just really wanted to make video because it was fun, right? And then as I made it, I started to see ways that I could apply that experience to other things that I was doing, because in my mind it was more fun, right? I like making video, but making video that nobody watches is no fun. So if in my professional space I had a big audience because of, you know, I could leverage that I was at Gatsby, then at Netlify, and then Solo. And in each of those places, my social media following was growing, and my companies had pretty big audiences. And like, if I made interesting video for them, then that would go out to a bigger audience, and that was way more fun, right? And so suddenly I was able to tie all of these seemingly unrelated skills in together to make stuff that was good for me professionally. And like, here I am now, you know, I'm running Code TV, and like my design chops have allowed me to like design the Code TV website and design the branding and production design for the shows that we do. And my cooking ability has allowed me to host like welcome dinners for Web Dev Challenge, which sadly I no longer have the bandwidth to do that. But you know, it's my experience in being a band manager has helped me figure out how to coordinate all the different things that are going on. And now my experience as like a producer on these sort of TV-like productions is making it possible for me to start having much bigger conversations with companies about, instead of doing like a one-off thing, well, I can just build you out a suite of stuff that, you know, you open up a budget with me for this many dollars, and in the scope of that budget, I will make you a lot of different things that keep a steady stream of good stuff going out. I never would have guessed that any of this stuff would have had any impact, but suddenly, you know, I'm doing quite a bit of business through Code TV, and my life has changed in ways that I could not have possibly predicted. And it all just happened because I kept doing the next fun thing. And I don't know how to articulate that in a way that, because like people will brush that stuff off and my mom will do this all the time where she's like, I wish I was as good as you at like finding these things that make money. And I was like, Mom, if I was doing this because I wanted to make money, I think I would have made a whole lot of different choices. I'm doing this because it's really interesting, and I'm good at asking people for money because I practiced asking people for money. I did a lot of that when I was living in the van in the band. If we didn't get $100 off the door for the show, we lived in Topeka. Right? Like, it was just one of those things. Yeah, you can just do stuff like I think Aaron Francis and now OpenAI has kind of co-opted that as a thing. But in a sense, you're optimizing for serendipity. I think that's exactly it, right? Is if you, I've heard it called luck surface area. The more stuff you do, the more stuff you create, the more people you meet, the more projects you put out into the world, the higher likelihood there is for something cool to happen to you. And so, they say luck is when opportunity meets preparation, or whatever that is. It's right place, right time. It's any way you want to describe that. But like, how do you make sure that you're standing in the right room with the right people so that when that opportunity comes up, you can say, oh yeah, I've done that before. Or yeah, I know how that works. I can help you with that. You can't predict it. You can't like engineer your way into saying like, okay, well, I have exactly this skill set, and so I need to meet exactly this person. I think it's just, you got to do it. And by doing it, you connect with more people. And by connecting with more people, you expand your network. And like I'll give you an example. In doing Web Dev Challenge Season 3, we did set upgrades. So as part of doing those set upgrades, I reached out to my network. I said, hey, who's a great production designer that could help me with this? And I work with a lot of people who are directors of photography and camera operators, sound mixers, gaffers, lighting, etc. And so they told me, oh, I was on a production and I worked with this production designer, that production designer, and I got connected with a woman named Whit Vogel. And Whit is she's a production designer here. She's great. But it turns out she also, once upon a time, worked in code. And so she was like really fascinated by what Code TV was doing, because it kind of touched her two interests. She's into code, she's into production design and film. And so she came in and has been this incredibly strong partner for me. Just was so stoked on what we were doing and was introducing me to all sorts of people in the industry, and like just really went above and beyond, like way beyond what I ever would have expected, because she thought it was cool. And I got lucky, and the right person recommended her to me at the right time when she had some bandwidth to take on a project. And so I got to work with her. And as a result, when I was telling her that I was looking at buying a building, she was like, oh, you need to meet my friend Randall. And so she introduced me to this guy named Randall. And Randall, it turns out, was like the lead carpenter on Titanic and has built sound stages all around for big companies and small companies. And so now I'm working with Randall as a consultant to like help me build out this stage in a way that's, cost effective, but still solving all the problems that it needs to solve. And he's immediately saved me hundreds of thousands of dollars, because originally I was thinking I needed to like do all this insulation and framing and drywall. And he was like, no, you don't need that. You're going to wrap the whole thing in curtains anyway. So just put up this sound blanket instead. And he pointed me to a product I'd never heard of before. And it's just instantly, it's like, oh my God, like what chain of events could have possibly led me to being able to call somebody who's worked on like huge productions, has decades of experience in film studios, to just be willing to get on a call with me and review my plans with me. And it's like no world could I have engineered that, and no world really can you cold call people like that, because I've tried it. Like I've tried cold calling producers and directors and people who've worked in the industry to just try to get a few minutes with them to ask some basic questions. And they're busy and they have no reason to trust me whatsoever. But because I came in through a recommendation to Wit, and then Wit saw what I was doing and she likes what I'm doing and saw that I was serious. She then vouched for me to Randall, who was willing to take my call. And I'm getting all these really cool things through because I'm building stuff and I'm putting it out in the world. And when people see it, they want to be part of it. Right. I'm able through the output and through a million other things. Like, I try really hard to make sure I don't nickel and dime people on rates. I'm doing my best to be really humble about all of this, because I don't know what I'm doing. And in a lot of cases, I'm asking a professional to come in and do something. And, my budgets are broken because I didn't realize that you needed, I didn't know that you needed to factor in a van rental budget when you do a project that's out of town. I didn't know, I've just never done it before. And so when they come in and they're looking at my budgets, I'm trying not to get defensive when they say, what are you going to do about this thing and this thing? And my instinct is well, we don't need that. But I'm okay, why are you asking about that? What is it for? And then they explain it and go, shit, I should have budgeted for that, huh? And so you learn, right? And in being willing to learn and not arguing with people and pretending that you know better, they then realize that you're somebody who's easy to work with, and that you're trying, even if you're not experienced, you're trying. And suddenly they'll vouch for you. They'll recommend you to people that would not take your call otherwise. And you have access to these rooms and these circles that you never could have engineered your way into. It has to be serendipitous, but it's not, I'm not doing it intentionally. I just want to make more stuff. And because I'm making more stuff and reinvesting whatever I can into making more stuff, it creates more opportunities. And I don't know, it's hard to overstate how much value there is in just trusting yourself to be the guide. You have things that you're excited about. And if you can be excited about those things in a way that you can make public, and, always be thinking about how do those things tie to any kind of revenue, and being really honest, you can't do anything if you can't pay your bills. So you tie it to revenue. How do I get people to pay me to make videos? I would love to make videos for no reason. I can't imagine anything more fun than being handed a giant art project budget and just saying make the coolest thing you can imagine. No rules. No one will review this. We're just going to put it in theaters when you're done. That's got to be cool, right? But I imagine that's not what the reality is. Even people Greta Gerwig and Christopher Nolan, who or Ryan Coogler, who are getting unbelievable budgets and unbelievable amounts of creative freedom. It's still a job. They still got to convince somebody that what they're doing is worth doing, and that they're making stuff they're still out there selling. They have to convince producers, they have to convince investors, they got to convince studios, they got to convince crew, and all of that is a skill that you kind of it can be fun to learn. It can be fun to learn how to sell things if you're not treating it like a dirty thing that you have to do. Money's not dirty. It's just another game, and you can play that game to enable yourself to do more things. And I don't know, I have a million little strong opinions about all that kind of stuff. A band about computer geeks called Living in Topeka. Yeah. Man, what a momentum today. Got a hell of a rant going. So where are we? What are we talking about? Let's try. So I updated the firmware on this thing, and I'm going to see if I can get it to run again. And the way I'm going to get it to run is I'm going to try this mic, which is I'm trying these wireless mics because I like them as a general concept. I think this dumped all my settings. That's not great. Interesting. Input selection. Is it Bluetooth? And then what? Do I get weird. I think this broke my... I don't think you can put these guys into it anymore. That's really a bummer. It's the pod mic. It's supposed to be the lav. Really a bummer if that's just like full broken now. Understand you are connected. Really, really not cool that all of this software just like completely ceased to function. Whatever, it's fine. I'll just deal with it later, I guess. One of the things that I'm going to do when I get into the new studio is I've decided that a big target for me is to make it easy for people to record podcasts. I think it's really cool to do podcasts in person, and I think that it makes them just they just feel better when they're done in person, I think. And so my intention is to put together some like ready to go podcast studios, which would mean that when somebody wanted to record, they could like rent the podcast studio, and that would give them a room. The mics would be in there, the video cameras would be in there, and they would be able to effectively like push play, probably with a producer, just because it's a lot of different inputs and you want somebody looking to make sure that they're all recording. But then it would put you in, like at the end, you would basically get back like the wide shot of the people in the podcast, close up on the two people who are talking, assuming it's two people, or like a wide shot of all four people, and then like a two shot of the two different guests, maybe shot in 6K so you can punch in if you wanted to, and individual mic channels for each one of them as well. And then that would give you the ability to like quickly hand off to a podcast editor, which we'll have one in-house at the studio, and or you can take it to your own editor, edit it yourself if you want to. But the way I'm going to dog food that is I'm going to use one of those studios for this show, and so I'm very excited to like work on that setup and get that all running. And then selfishly, what I really want to figure out how to do is get more people to come through and have like live in studio guests and stuff, because it's just more fun. Like it's way more fun to do it that way. I'd love to do more Learn with Jason in person, Web Dev Podcast in person, like figuring out how to make more of that possible. And you know, some of that comes down to sponsorship. Like if we have sponsorship money, then I can afford to fly people out and put them up. Some of that comes down to efficiency. Like if we've got somebody coming in to record something else, like put them in for an extra day so that we can record some podcasts and stuff while they're here. And part of it too is just logistics. Like I just need like a full-time producer to help me coordinate this stuff, because I have a bunch of ideas, and if I had more time, we would be able to do it. But like somebody's got to make those phone calls and schedule those calendar things. What's up, Paterfamilias? So I have been ranting about all sorts of things. I feel, you know, as usual, just using this as therapy. We got a lot going on here. As I mentioned, I'm in the process of buying a commercial building, and I just got the addendum on like negotiations for final price. We all signed, we're all agreed, which is really exciting. And so that's like one of the big things. Like we've agreed on a price, we've agreed on timelines, and now I have to go into the next phase, which is the scary phase, where I need to get an architect and start getting city permits. And we also have to do a environmental hazards test called a phase one, which I'm not looking forward to because it's an old building and I'm just, you always have that fear that there's going to be like asbestos or something in it. And then you have to, I don't even want to know what it takes to deal with. I'm hoping I don't have to find out. It's a cement building, so I'm hoping there's no asbestos in it, but you never know. And then if we get this is another kind of fun thing, like we're talking about the infinite game. Never would I have thought that I would need to know about commercial real estate or commercial construction. And I'm learning more about it than I ever wanted to. Certainly not enough that I'd be able to like, originally I'd sort of entertained the idea of being my own general contractor, which is like the controlling brain for everything, because the stuff I want to do is going to be expensive, and a GC tends to add like 20 to 30% to a bill because they're doing a lot of like management and coordination stuff. And I was like, well, I could probably figure this out. And then I thought about it a little bit more, and I was like, I cannot figure this out. And then I'm also going through the Small Business Association, and the loan officer for the Small Business Association was like, we won't let you. You're not allowed to be your own GC when it's an SBA loan. And I was kind of going through all the different bids, because you need different contractors for different things, right? Like you need we are going to get the bathrooms overhauled, and we need to remove like a mezzanine layer from one of the warehouse bays, and we need to the sewer needs to be replaced because it's an old line and it's like cracked and it's leaking, and so that has to get fixed. And then we need to get the electrical is like really old panels, so we need to get that updated. We need to get the roof is basically a tear off replacement at this point, and so that needs to be like handled, and each of those is a different contractor, and they all have different processes, different bids. They don't really talk to each other. And I started thinking about sequencing of this stuff, and I was kind of just talking through it with Brad, the guy who's helping me with the SBA loan, and he was like, "You see why we don't let you GC, right?" And I was like, "Yeah, I get it." But yeah, I'm super excited about the building. Like the end goal is that it's basically like right now the Code TV studio is a 2,400 square feet that is packed to the gills with Web Dev Challenge stuff. It's the set has sort of expanded to fill every available nook and cranny inside of the Web Dev Challenge, or the Web Dev Challenge has filled every nook and cranny inside of the studio space. And while I love that, like, it's been so cool to build that set out and really make it into something special. It also means that like my original streaming setup, the one that I had back in 4 months ago or whatever, I lost that space. I can't use it anymore. So now I'm in a conference room, and you can probably hear, aside from the fact that I'm on a different mic today, you can probably hear that this room's got a lot more reverb in it. It's basically an empty rectangle drywalled space with a concrete floor. And so I've got some rugs down here, and if I was going to stay longer, I would throw some sound blankets up on the wall that would be just out of view and would probably help with some of the hotness happening over here. We'd get some negative fill, but I'm not sticking around, so I don't want to like put any effort into it. But so, the new building is going to have it's like a 24 by 70 bay that when we're done will probably be closer to like 23 by, call it 60. And that's going to be the Web Dev Challenge space, because what is that? 23 by 60 is 1,380 square feet. So it's not as big as the current space, but like minus the conference room and minus the room that the camera team is setting up in, I think it's pretty close. And I took some basic measurements of like the rectangular size of the three areas that we use for Web Dev Challenge. We got the lounge, the build area, and the demo area. Rectangular size will fit into that studio bay. But then we've got so that's going to be Studio B. Studio A is going to be a larger space. It is 35 by 70. When it's done, it'll probably be 35 by 68, 67, something like that. And that one, will be like, we've got bigger productions that we're doing. And right now I'm having to rent a space out in Cornelius, which, I mean, I love it so much. Like the guys that own it are these really cool brothers. They're like legends around here. They're super cool, but it's a 45-minute drive each way. And it's also a rental fee. And I've built up this whole like lighting kit that they will let you use it, but like their business is lighting. And so if I go out there and don't use their lighting, you pay they joke that it's a corkage fee, but like, it's also just kind of like uncool to go out and use their space and not pay for the lighting. And so it's very like, you don't want to do wrong by people. But it just, the budgets go out of control when you start looking at renting spaces and renting lights. And I've spent all this money on Code TV to build out lighting rigs and to buy the grip gear so that I'm not renting it every production. So the Studio A is going to give me the ability to do the bigger productions in my own facility, which will help me control like the rental costs and make it possible to do more of these productions. Cause like if we're in a big space, I don't mind paying. I love paying contractors. I would love to be able to put more of the money into contractors and not into like rentals. I don't love renting things. It makes me feel, I don't know. If I didn't have to pay for the rentals, I would like up the production design budget and like bring in an extra carpenter, or like be able to spend some money on electronics or put more money into the motion design. There's like ways that I'd like to spend it that aren't renting lights. So Studio A is going to unlock that for the vast majority of productions that we have done so far. And so obviously if we scale up, we'll need more space, but it's also going to give me a proper gear cage. Right now I have a closet that's like 5 by 10 maybe, and it's overflowing, really hard to navigate in there. Like you have to unload certain things to get to other things. It's fine. We live with it, but like the new space is going to have, it's going to be like a proper gear closet with air conditioning and lots and lots of storage and workbenches. And right now some of the workbenches aren't in the gear cage, so you have to kind of like carry stuff around the studio to put a rig together. I don't love that. I want to be able to build a rig in one place. We will also have 2 podcast studios. So Studio C and D, which will be the like the smaller kind of ready to go studios. Those will be rentable by anybody here in town. Studio A will be rentable. Well, Studio A will be rentable by anybody here in town, but it's like more of you got to be kind of serious about a production for that one to make sense, because it's going to be expensive. You're going to have to carry insurance. Whereas the podcast studios, I want to rent those out on like an hourly basis so that you can come in and like, for $100, a couple $100, you record an episode of your show, which I realize for a lot of podcasts, that's not reasonable. But like for any podcast that's got any sponsorship or wants to get sponsorship, I think that's a pretty low rate to be able to come in and use a professional set and have the professional cameras. And, it's going to be, you'll probably be looking at $20,000 worth of electronics that you get access to for a couple $100. So just in rental fees, like if you were going to rent that camera for a day, it would cost you $80, right? So renting 3 of those cameras and then renting the lighting and the space and having the producer in there, like making sure that stuff is accessible to people, but also a revenue stream for the business. We'll actually get a green room now, which if anybody has been on the show, I know some of you in the chat today have been on the show, and you've probably realized that like we don't really have a green room. We have like a kitchen, but there's not seating or anything like that. You kind of have to sit in the background of the show if you're hanging around. And if you've watched the show, you've probably seen people are kind of in the background, and people are working, and you'll see the crew and you'll see me, you'll see the advisor just kind of like chilling on a couch out of focus in the background. That's because we don't have a green room. We don't have a lot of space for people to not be on camera. So you have to move through the main space, which is, I kind of like seeing how the sausage gets made. I think it's cool to see like some lights move around, or to see a crew member moving through the background. But it'll be nice to be able to make that a conscious decision instead of a out of necessity decision. We'll also get a proper kitchenette. We'll get a couple bathrooms. Right now we have one, and it's like a murder hallway. I hate it. It'll be great to have 2 bathrooms. We'll be able to put in a little kitchenette there so that it's a little nicer, and just little things that are going to improve the quality of life for people in the studio. We'll have some production offices. We'll have little vocal recording booth, all of which is both to improve the quality of life for people who are participating in Code TV productions, but also when people come in and rent, I want them to be able to have a space for the talent to be. I want them to be able to have a vanity row so that the hair and makeup team has a place to have like up to 3 hair and makeup stations. I want them to have a proper green room so that we can set up a video village and they can, they'll be able to like watch the cameras without having to be in the studio. Just little things like that really improve for like an agency or a production, for them to be able to kind of operate the production in a way that that improves their quality of life without like drastically requiring them to like build a space inside of the space. And all of that points to, I'm very excited about Code TV, but the thing that I'm trying to be mindful of is like everything comes in seasons. And so it's working now. I hope it continues to work. I'm going to do my best to keep finding new ways to make it grow and expand and make it more interesting. And we've got new shows coming out that I can't wait to show everybody. We've got, some things in the hopper that like, if I can get people across the line, they're going to be so much fun. And I'm also mindful of the fact that like things come and go, and I don't necessarily want to be in a situation where all of my eggs are in the Code TV basket. So thinking about the studio as another revenue stream where like productions in town can rent the space, and like local podcasts that aren't necessarily in tech can come in and rent the space, and that starts to create revenue streams that hopefully make me resilient to slow periods in tech. And I'm also open to the idea that through all of this, I'm going to be meeting different people in different areas of the industry, and like who knows what that means. Like that, if history is any guide, I'm 5 years into this like video push. 5 years before that, I was it's 2026. So 5 years before that, it was 2016. I had barely started at IBM, and I would have thought that my track was to like move toward principal engineer somewhere. 5 years before that, that would have been 2011. I had just moved to Portland to try to legitimize my my agency, and I wanted to be an agency running entrepreneur, building websites forever. So like I have in 5 years before that, I was trying to be a rock star. I was like in a van trying to make it as a musician, and I had zero vision of myself working in tech at all. I don't even know that I would have been able to picture myself in tech. So 5 years from now, who the hell knows what I'll be doing, right? I'm just going to keep doing fun stuff, and I'll see what opportunities open up, and I'll go where those opportunities go. My current hunch is that there's quite a bit of space left in Code TV. So I'm going to keep pushing in that direction and see how much further we can go. But yeah, you keep building stuff, you keep putting it out into the world, you keep taking the meetings when you get the opportunity, and you explore what's possible and see how far you can push yourself, your limits, your capabilities, your connections, like all those things, and hopefully turn that into something really, really fun. How old am I now? I turned 40 this last summer. So let's see, I've been in tech now I think I started when I was like 18 or something. Would have been about 2000. It's like 2003, I started customizing MySpace pages and stuff. And then I think around 2007 was when I got really serious about it. But in the prior time, I was taking like little one-off side work and all that kind of stuff. But yeah, cool if I could get well-known YouTube web devs on the Web Dev Challenge. Yeah, I've talked to Wes and Scott and to Kevin actually. Wes and Scott are both interested, but their schedules are very similarly heinous to my schedule, which has made it just impossible to actually line it up. Kevin and I want to do it. I've got a couple coming up that I think are going to be a good match for Kevin. He just, a lot of the stuff that's been coming through is AI sponsorship, and that's just not really his bag. And he doesn't, he wanted to focus more on a front end challenge. So we got a couple things coming that are far more front end centric that I'm really excited about. And I can't Ink's not dry on the contract yet, so I'm not going to talk about what they are. But if and when that dries up, I'll be really, really excited to hopefully get people like Kevin on the show. And then, I've had like Web Dev Cody came on once, way back in the day when it was still remote. He was in season 0. And then I've talked to a handful of other well-known YouTubers to see if I could get them on, and the trick is always just timing. Like everybody's very busy. How many databases do you use when working on a complex platform? Local test prod. That's a good question. I mean, I think it depends on the project. So like, for example, I would usually on like a project that is just me working on, I'd probably have 2. Like I'd have a production database and a local database. If I was working with a platform like Neon, they do branch-based stuff. So similar to Netlify, when you put up a pull request, it'll do a branch. And so you can deploy like branch versions of your app for testing and show and tell. And Neon will do the same thing where they'll do like branch-based databases. So for every PR, you get your own instance of the database that you can kind of go out and show people how it works and try stuff. And that's pretty dang cool. But I would say the right number of databases is directly tied to the level of complexity of your review process, the number of people working on the app, and also like how important it is for the data to be really close to production data. So for example, in a CRM, it might matter less to have like production-like data because it's names and emails and stuff like that. Whereas in a, if you're working with like content or user input or something like that, it might make way more sense to have more production like stuff because the behavior of a few lorem ipsum posts is way different from tens of thousands of user input posts where they've done all sorts of chaotic things in all sorts of languages. And you just you can't see how that works until you actually look at the data running in the app. So yeah, to answer your question, I would say probably a minimum 2, but as you kind of move through, like, yeah, 3 if you want to share a staging app with people for testing, and if you really need to do like a lot of iterative stuff, then looking into something that does branch like per PR stuff. Let's see, a city platform would be kind of cool. All electronics programming web dev challenge. So the short answer is yes. The longer answer is I don't know. I don't have the connections at those companies. So I'm extremely interested in like an electronic base, like a hardware based kind of thing. Like we've had Leon Noel came on and did some really cool stuff with, I think it was a Raspberry Pi and some various sensors. We've had a couple other people, like Craig Dennis has been on and played with some hardware with Shirley Wu. They did some really cool like hardware visualization stuff that I loved. Those are always like, I get really excited about that kind of build. And I've started pitching a lot of stuff that has a lot of electronics going on. But I need to focus on the network in that direction because I don't have any contacts at those places. Let's see. Crowd Supply. Yeah, I don't know who. See, this is the other thing is I'm only like sort of in the world, so I don't even know what Crowd Supply is, in fact. Do I know any tech comedy podcasts? I don't. The closest I can think of is like Alexis Gay and what's his real name? Ben, I think, from Krazam. They've been doing like a sketch show that I think is a tech. If it's not tech centric, it's definitely tech adjacent. Aaron McHale Staples does some tech comedy stuff. Man, back in the day, there was Yanni Evocalio and a few others did an improv group called I think it was called like Smoosh. And then it was maybe like Component did Smoosh or something like that. Tech it, Jason. God damn it. But yeah, otherwise I would say I only know the ones that are sort of like news with a comedy twist. So Alex Trost does a Daily Show style show that is that's pretty funny. And then what's his name? Like Fireship. Although I guess Fireship is kind of a different thing now that it's owned by private equity. But yeah, I don't know. I definitely open to it. If you've got some tech podcasts that are comedy based, throw them in the Discord, because I will lose them if they end up in the chat here. Let me throw the Discord up here. But yeah, please, if you're not in the Discord, please join the Discord. And I guess this is as good a time as any to remind everybody that if you want to see more stuff from me and Code TV, subscribe to the channel, hit the like button, if whatever platform you're on, do the share, the repost, the retweet. If you really want to see us do more, we have the ability to become a supporter on codetv.dev, which is it's like $5 a month, or we've got a higher tier. I'm not going to say why, but if you've been considering doing that, now would be a good time, because we got some stuff coming, and there's going to be some bonuses for existing supporters that won't exist for net new supporters. Wink, wink, nudge, nudge. Not very good at winking. I guess I probably should have winked with like the close eye. Is that mischief? I don't know. It just looks like I have something in my eye. But anyways, yeah, it's we do a lot of cool stuff on Code TV, and it is very directly correlated how cool it can be to how much money we have. So yeah. Which components am I using? I am using my own components. This is one of those things. I like to do things the long way, and it is not because I don't like new tools or because I think that component systems are bad or anything like that. I love a good component system, but I work largely alone, and I work on a single property, and I don't get to code very often. And so I like to think of code, like when I work on code, I approach it with the same level of this is my fun, relaxing time that I think other people approach things like crochet or knitting or whittling wood or pottery or whatever, right? Like I like to do it inefficiently by hand. I like to handwrite stuff. I like to reimagine things and fiddle with them and all of that stuff, because it is very rewarding to me. Like I like to do that. So my recommendations are probably not recommendations that I would take into a company. Like when I worked at IBM, they had Carbon design system, and it was very, very good. And that's what we used. And I didn't fight against it. I had no interest in like reinventing that wheel. And when I was at Netlify had kind of a design system, and we used that. And I didn't push against it because, again, I don't want to invent that wheel. I believe that the right design system for the team is the one that everybody can rally around, and that the point of a design system is to minimize the amount of bike shedding that happens around like delivering. And I don't want to argue with somebody over how a button is implemented. I just want to build that piece of UI at work. And so when you're at work, you should use the system that works. And if it doesn't work, figure out why. But like a lot of times it can be repaired. It doesn't need to be replaced. And if it does need to be replaced, then make sure that the conversation isn't about what is a technically superior implementation, but socially, which one is going to get used, because that's the right choice to make for a team, is like choose the thing that the team will use, not the thing that you find to be the most technically pure. I made that mistake once. I tried to roll out like all functional programming. I was at IBM, and oh man, this was such like a senior junior moment, if this makes sense. Like you get hired because you're really good at code, and you really show how inexperienced you are with like teams and adoption and like cultural stuff, because you just do the most technically impressive, terrible thing you can possibly think of. So what I did was I started re-rolling various bits of business logic at IBM into Ramda, which Ramda is a functional programming kit, I guess, for JavaScript, so that you can turn. And if you've never done functional programming is very fun. It is a complicated puzzle to solve because every function gets one input. And so you learn a lot about things like currying, and you learn a lot of things like about composition. And it turns into this like fun game where you try to learn how much you can do with functional programming. And the short answer is you can do everything if you twist your mind into these really, really complicated knots. The better answer is that functional programming is really, really good for a very narrow subset of tasks. And as soon as you get into anything with side effects, you should immediately stop using functional programming, because it's not built for that. I, however, not to be deterred, had managed to just rewrite a ton of stuff into functional code. And I started trying to roll this out across the team, because I was like, this is technically superior. This is a more robust, and what did I say? It's like I used a bunch of like functional programming buzzwords, and I got way up in my team's face about it. And at the end of the day, they were just like, no, like nobody's going to do this. Like, how do you expect that everybody in the company is going to like take the time to sit down and learn functional programming in the specific way that you've implemented it, so that we can roll this out? And it was a good lesson for me, because I realized that the valuable system is the one that people will use. And it kind of doesn't, like, it could be jQuery. If everybody uses it consistently and gets good results, that's the one that actually delivers value, because now you've got something that is going out to the users with the fixes that they requested. And if you try to rewrite everybody over into Haskell or something, and nobody on your team knows Haskell, what are you going to do? Pause the whole company for 6 months while everybody upskills on Haskell? Like, of course you're not going to do that. You're just going to stop shipping, because everybody's going to not know how the code base works anymore. Now you're the only one who can work on it, which is what a lot of companies end up doing. Like, we saw this happen with the Rust thing, where somebody would get really excited about Rust. They would rewrite a lot of the code base into Rust. Most of the team didn't know how Rust worked. And so you end up with these people who are these bottlenecks, not intentionally, but because they truly believe it's better. But then they get caught in a world where there's no support system. There's nobody to help them. Everything they've built is bespoke in a language that nobody else writes. And you've now invented a wheel that only you understand and only you can support. And your punishment for this is that you are now the only person who can handle PagerDuty, and you are the only person who can answer any questions about it. And if you ever want to leave, you basically have to make the choice to like fully screw the team that you're leaving behind, because they don't know how the thing works. And if you've ever been at a company where somebody brilliant comes in and implements an entire system that nobody understands and then bails to their next job, you may be familiar with this story. But yeah. My Lucille Blue. Yeah. So this is something that my wife and I do all the time, is like, we'll try to do the Lucille, the really bad wink that Lucille Bluth does. Oh, I love it so much. Web dev challenge, but you're making lace. Oh God, what a nightmare that would be. Fada, I would take the intro. Maybe just make the connection though. Because that way I can, get a chance to talk to her before I ask for things. I think that would be a good way to go. What's up, Central Asia? How you doing? Universal design. Let's see. I believe in universal design system, but you have to accept and yeah. Functional programming is amazing as long as your software doesn't actually have to do anything. Incredible. What's the most I ever made on a single web dev project? Good question. I made, probably the most I ever made on a single web dev project is I got paid 120 grand to do a year of R&D on this, like, it was, what was it? It was kind of like what Zoom became. So this was before we were basically only Skype existed at this point. There were like some rudimentary examples out there, but this was before the pandemic. This was in 2016. So like nobody really dug into this because remote wasn't as urgent. So the app was like, how could you remotely conduct a workshop was what they were trying to explore. And so I ended up building a lot of, this stuff didn't exist yet. Like WebSockets weren't really stable. So I was implementing a lot of WebRTC stuff and figuring out how to get videos synced up in a way that would allow us to have, multiple people attending, and we needed one person to be the presenter and other people to be visible but mutable by the mods. And so getting permission handling, and it was really an exploration kind of thing. And then we also wanted the ability for the presenter to be showing slides and stuff, but we didn't want it. And this was honestly one of the reasons I think the experiment failed was we didn't just go with like an immediate screen share. We wanted it to be like, the presentation was part of the system. And so it was also kind of building a CMS around how that stuff worked. And so it was a very cool project. I'm so grateful for that team for like building it, and ultimately they decided they were going to do a different thing. So it kind of was like it didn't get killed because it didn't work. It was working. We were running tests, but it got killed because like strategically they decided they weren't going to pursue that line of business. But yeah, I made, that was like my full income for like a year. I made 120 grand, and I wasn't working very much on that. Like I probably worked like 10 hours a week for that whole year on that project, because it was like a relay race. They'd give me something that they wanted to see, and I would build it, and it'd take me like 10 hours, and I would ship it back and say like, okay, let me know if you need anything. They'd say, well, we'll review it in the meeting. And so I was like, well, do you want me to do something else while I'm idle? Like you basically paid me for full-time work. And they were like, we don't have anything for you, so just sit tight. Like they were super chill. I've never had a deeper existential crisis than that. It's very hard to have somebody like in the most kind way possible say your work isn't that important, so don't worry about it. that'll put you into a tailspin if anything will. That being said, I just realized I am out of time. I gotta move on. I got somebody coming by the studio here any second now, so I'm going to wrap it up here. Thank you all so much for hanging out. We've got a new episode of Web Dev Challenge is out now. You can watch it. If you are a CodeDB supporter, you are able to watch it over the weekend, get your early access in. Again, some changes coming up relatively soon on Code TV that are going to have an impact on how the supporter system works. So if you've considered becoming a supporter, now is the time, because we are going to have some benefits available to existing supporters that will not be available when we change the system over. So wink, wink, nudge, nudge. We got good stuff coming up the rest of this week as well. I'm going to be at ProtoConf, or the Atmosphere Conf in Vancouver, BC. If you're in that area, So yeah, say hi, whatever. I got a bunch of travel coming up. So my streaming schedule is going to get patchy for the next month or so, because I'm in Vancouver starting tomorrow. I'm in Denver the week after that. And then I'm back doing some production stuff, and then I'll be in Miami for React Miami. We'll be in Europe for Beyond Tellerand. We will be tooling around Europe for fun and for Marissa's birthday. And then when I get back, I go into the biggest production we've ever done at Code TV for 6 straight weeks, which I'm really excited about. And I'll be putting up a note about casting for that one. So if any of you are available to be in Portland for 6 consecutive weekends, either traveling in or setting up shop here, maybe keep an eye on things. Maybe even give me a little nudge in the old Discord, because we need people and it's going to be really fun. And I think you're going to enjoy the concept when everybody sees it. So anyways, have a great week, y'all. I will talk to you all online. See you in the Discord. See you on the social medias. Bye.